Welcome to the Future Christian Podcast, your source for insights and ideas on how to lead your church in the 21st century. At the Future Christian Podcast, we talk to pastors, authors, and other faith leaders for helpful advice and practical wisdom to help you and your community of faith walk boldly into the future. Whether you're a pastor, church leader, or a passionate member of your faith community, this podcast is designed to challenge, inspire, and equip you with the tools you need for impactful ministry. And now for a little bit about the guest for this episode.
Welcome to the Future Christian Podcast. Today, Loren Richmond Jr. is in conversation with Jason Hanselman. Jason currently serves as a donor relations director with Mission Aviation Fellowship. His ministry experience spans more than 25 years. He has led in a variety of capacities in kingdom-building roles as a pastor, missionary, church planter, and fundraiser. Jason was born and raised in Denver, Colorado, where he met his wife, Mary. They've been married for 32 years. He holds a bachelor's degree in ministry and a Master of Arts degree in education. Jason's goal is to partner with other kingdom-minded individuals and churches to raise enough resources to make it possible for deaf people all over the world to see Jesus in their heart language. Jason enjoys spending time with his family on hikes and in art museums. Jason and Mary raised their 3 children in Idaho, Naomi, Grace, and Solomon. When he has extra time, Jason is a portrait artist and an avid sports fan. A reminder before we start today's conversation, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share Future Christian with a friend. Connect with Loren, Martha, and Future Christian on Instagram. Shoot us an email at loren@resonatemediapro.com with comments, questions, or ideas for future episodes. We appreciate your voice in how we faithfully discern the future of the church.
Hello and welcome to the Future Christian Podcast. This is Loren Richmond Jr., and today I'm pleased to be welcoming Jason Hanselman to the show. Hello and welcome.
Good morning, Loren. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for making some time for this conversation. Anything else you want to say about yourself for our listeners?
I'm a motorcycle enthusiast, and so I enjoy doing that. But actually, one of the things I really love to do is paint portraits. So I've just, when the pandemic hit, I had nothing to do. So I started to paint pictures on my garage wall, and my wife said, why don't we just get you some canvases? We don't need to take up all of the space in the garage. So it's been a great release.
That's a really cool thing, and you've kept it up since COVID.
I have. Actually, when I left high school, I thought I would be a world-famous artist. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that did not pan out.
But right?
Yeah. Well, you have to die, I think, first to be famous in the art world. But yeah, so I've had that latent passion there for a long time. And, when things got tough, I needed to get creative. And so that was one of my outlets to be creative. So really enjoy it.
That's great. Yeah. I guess like in 100 years, right? Archaeologists, is that the right word? Are going to come back and be like, oh, this is the famed garage of,
Right. Look at this. Look at these cavemen. How did they get so advanced in their artwork?
Well, thanks for sharing that. Share, if you would, kind of about your faith background, what that's looked like in the past and what that looks like today.
Yeah. So when I went to Bible college in my early 20s and headed into ministry, but it was a non-denominational Christian church. And I did not ever think I would be in ministry either. But I met some people in my life who really lived their faith out. And I thought, man, I really want to do that. I really want to be that. And I followed them off to Bible college and then got into ministry and just served churches and nonprofits ever since then. So that's kind of been my faith journey. My folks raised me in the church, so I don't have any crazy, I jumped off the rails too far in my life story. But, I wandered a little bit in high school and came back and then really just found that ministry was a good fit for me for a while.
Yeah, awesome. And what are some spiritual practices? I mean, it sounds like, I don't know if this is too much of a stretch to say, is painting a spiritual practice for you, or anything else you want to share?
Painting can be. It is not for me. This is going to sound weird, but asking people for money is a very spiritual endeavor for me. And here's why. At least when I read the Bible, I see that Jesus says there's competition for two things, for his love and then our love for money. Right? So when I sit in front of somebody and ask them for money, you can see the wheels turn like, what am I going to give up in order to give to help those people? And so it's just a good time for people to wrestle with that and be reminded that time is limited, resources are limited, but this is your opportunity to make a big difference.
Well, that leads well into our conversation that we're going to have here on stewardship and fundraising. And I suppose that's a good way to approach the conversation. And maybe let me address it personally here. Like, I was just looking at like my giving from my church. Like, they sent out, I think, the third quarter statements, and I was like,
right.
Boy, I'm not giving enough. And I wrestle. I think this gets into a broader conversation that I'm sure you have to wrestle with organizations and churches and donors around their own money scripts.
Right.
So maybe let's start with that, because I think we all have our own sort of money scripts that influences how we think about money. What comes to mind for you there?
I think most of us wrestle with money on some level because we all have sort of a childhood connection to it somewhere. So we were raised like, this is how we deal with money, and you look at your mom and dad and how they dealt with it. Were they really generous people, or were they not so generous? And I think we just developed these habits or fears around money. If you grow up without money, you're always wondering, am I ever going to have enough? And sometimes when you grow up with a lot of money, it doesn't mean much to you. And so you kind of get a little frivolous with it. But, in the donor space, people who have wealth don't think about money the same way that you and I do when we approach them to ask them for money. They understand that their wealth is, I want to say required. I don't know how to say that well, but they know that their money is going to help people and they want to get a return on that investment. And so they're sort of waiting and eager for you to talk about it. But a lot of times we shy away from that because of our own hangups with money.
Yeah, that's helpful. Now, as we think about, thinking about COVID and the years since COVID, I mean, I think it's kind of funny to think about, like, we've already talked about COVID, but it almost seems like it's been a distant memory. Like, have you noticed any shifts, whether it be in fundraising specifically, in nonprofit space, in church space? I mean, certainly in church space, right? There was this huge bump where so many churches felt like they were going to be in dire straits, and then giving went up drastically. Have you noticed giving trends changing in these last, 5 years or so?
Here's what I would say about that. I think, there used to be a time when you could just show up to somebody and say, hey, give me some money. And they're like, and they felt guilty or whatever. And so they would hand it over. But I think, more and more givers, donors, partners, whatever you want to call it, want a return on their investment now. They want to say, hey, I'm happy to give you this, but please show me where it's going, what it's doing, how am I making a difference in the world? How is this funding going to make a difference in the world? So I guess they're expecting a higher level of accountability in that respect. So the organizations that can show, here's how we're making a difference, often will win more money that way. And the ones that kind of are lax on demonstrating that they are really doing something with the money invested in them are going to struggle.
So let's bring this real practical for thinking of churches, and I think this also applies for nonprofits. But for a church who, their primary method of engagement, right, is often the Sunday morning service, and that's kind of not meant to be I don't know. I wouldn't think I'm a pastor. I know you've worked in pastoral ministry too. Like I wouldn't think of that as like a fundraising experience.
Well, I'm glad I'm here to talk to you then.
But yeah, tell me like, how do pastors, how do church leaders navigate that space, A, to stay true to their values, and then I think also B, thinking about like the disconnect of like they're so used to just like expecting people to put money in the plates.
Right. Well, here's a practical example. I was at a church, I won't say which one, the other day, but they did their air quote money talk that day, which I always hate when they set it up that way, because it makes giving an enemy, which so we have the most giving God in the world.
Real quick, define what you talk about when you say that money talk.
So the budget is down, the numbers are crunching.
Yeah.
People aren't going to get paid. Oh my goodness, we need to have the money talk with people.
Right.
Or this is the annual time of year where we talk about money. Well, what's funny is, the guy said, we don't really want to talk about money around here. And here's one of the reasons why. About 4% of you will leave when we talk about money. And I leaned over to my wife and I whispered, yeah, but the 96% are the ones who really are engaged with this. So we always frame it in the negative. It's like the 4% who don't want to talk about money really maybe not be invested. And so this may not be the thing for them. But the 96% of us who will stick around, let's make it a better discussion around what giving is about and what it will do and how we can be involved in that. And I think if you paint a clear vision and you say, here will be the outcomes to that, and here's what we need for that, more people are willing to come alongside that than they are the guilt trip. Like, oh my goodness, we have to talk about money. So throw your money in the plate. Your granny and your auntie give, so make sure not to disappoint them. All of those crazy things that we talk about. Or hey, if you just give up a soda a day,
right,
you could put that money in the plate. And it's like, well, that's not very compelling to me. I'd rather have a soda than not. So have a nice day.
I do like my Diet Pepsi.
Yeah,
almost every day.
Hey, you need to convert to Coke Zero. Yeah, and I do mean convert. So. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is good. I mean, I think that you're hitting on some trends or some, not trends is the right word, but tropes. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That we hear again and again in church. Like I'm thinking also of the narrative that you probably heard as much as I have. Like, oh, churches are money hungry. They always talk about money. So there's this weird disconnect. Or this weird.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
What is that about? Like,
I think some churches do just focus on the guilt and shame side of it. You're going to be a better person if you give more money, or, the church roof is going to leak. And if you don't give your money, then, it's just focused on guilt and shame. And, imagine if we talked about, child rearing the same way.
Right. Some do.
That's a good point. But what's been the effect of that? It's all been negative.
Right.
And so let's start thinking about money as not evil,
right,
but as a resource and a tool. And if we're able to carefully and clearly tell people what their money will do, it's way more exciting. And, it cuts into that, feeling of guilt. It's like, we're not going to guilt you into this, but we're going to ask you to join us.
Yeah.
Come alongside of us.
Yeah.
And I think that's way more compelling than the guilt trip.
Yeah.
Some churches do it poorly. So, there is a reason why people say those things. I do agree, but we need to change how we talk about it.
Well, I think about this too, Jason. It's like nonprofits. Like I've not been in the nonprofit space for, when I think like outside of church nonprofit space for like a long, long time. But it's like nonprofits, like I get emails from some of the nonprofits I support like incessantly, feels like.
Right.
So it's not like they're not talking about money a lot. So I think, is it just that like churches aren't talking about money well?
Yes. I think they're just talking about the paper. Like one of the guys I learned from, he said, we need to stop talking about money. It's like years ago, decades ago, when the American Indians were prominent here, they would exchange wampum, right? Which is a currency that you and I don't understand. But essentially, that's what we're doing when we send out those emails. We're just trading wampum with people. Give us your wampum, we'll give you ours. And it just is not a good way to talk about money. And to continually put an ask in front of somebody without talking about the impact or the change, they just consider you to be an ATM machine. And it's just not a good way to talk about money. So.
Yeah, I'm reminded of, like, I was listening to an interview some years back, a few years back, with like a executive from Chick-fil-A, right? And he's talking about how, like, they have this mindset of, like, where in most fast food companies, it's like they see someone in line and think, like, how can I get the $20 out of that guy's pocket? Whereas Chick-fil-A tries to have the attitude of, like, how can I don't know, bring the most value to that person and their $20?
Yeah. I think when we invite people into the change process and talk to them about the opportunity that they have to do some good with their money, it's so much better. One thing that I didn't say that probably we should is you should also give people a space to say no. Right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of fundraisers are like, man, if they say no, that's the end of the world. And they don't, you know what? It is a decision that they need to make, and you need to be okay as long as you do your very best to talk about, here's the change that we're trying to engender in the world.
Yeah.
And you can join us and kind of, like everything else, here's the cost.
Yeah.
So just serving people better that way.
So I'm thinking about, when we're thinking about, like, messaging and giving people space to say no, like, is this one of the challenges with churches? Because, like, you're dealing with, I mean, this is less true, like, now as it has been historically. Like, data suggests, like, churches almost exclusively are, like, upper class folks. But, like, is this, like, the challenge of church historically, in that there's different, to use a fundraising term, segments?
Yeah.
Like, do churches need to do a better job about thinking about how they're communicating with their different giving segments?
I think that would help, Loren. Actually, for me, giving is a very personal thing. And so I just wish, I never did this when I was in ministry because I didn't know about it. But I think we should meet with people as a family or an individual and to make an ask.
Yeah.
Because it's that personal, right? I mean, oftentimes, we sit in a room, and you've been into these fundraising events, and they make an ask, and you look around and you're like, well, I'm glad John and Jane Smith are here tonight to write the check. I'm off the hook, right? So it needs to be more direct. It needs to be more personable. But like you said, the word segment is a good word. It needs to be geared toward what we think they can or can't do.
Yeah.
If you ask too little, then the guy who can give a lot says, you must not have a very big vision.
Right.
And then if you ask too much, I'd rather ask for too much, because you can always back that down. It's like, they're like, I don't have that kind of money. Okay, well, let's talk about what would be meaningful to you then. And always keep that in view.
Yeah, this is good. I'm thinking about this even in my own context. Something I want to ask about is, I had this conversation with, on a past episode with Cheryl Johnson, who's a clergy person in Canada and also works in the United States. And we talked about, like, the donor-centered fundraising and how that model is not always, like, a perfect fit for churches, because certainly in church space, like, we're asking them to grow and have a more of a life shaped more by the gospel message of Jesus. What are your thoughts on, like, that donor-centered model in church spaces, and might it need to be tweaked a little bit?
I like donor-centered models, because we're really just talking about the passion and the interest of that individual.
Okay.
And also, we just have to know exactly where we're going with things too. Because if we just sit in front of somebody and say, well, this is your duty to give, it just doesn't feel genuine or authentic.
Mm-hmm.
But this speaks to the point that you need to really know people. Like, if somebody has worked in the nursery for 20 years, you probably want to talk to them about giving to the kids' programs first.
Right.
But at the same time, I think going to people and just asking them what they're interested in, figuring out what it is that makes them tick, that, hey, don't just give them one option.
Mm-hmm.
Put several options in front of them to say, we need some help in the kids area, or we've got this really growing teens thing, or we want to plan another site someday.
Mm-hmm.
Which of these really interests you? What would you like to get on board with and help? I think that's much better than just going and ramming one ask down somebody's throat and saying, here's what we need, give it to us, or it's all a bust. It's all lost. So, that's how I'm donor centric, is focusing on their passions and then presenting a need to them that they can buy into.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm thinking too of, I want to go back to this just because I think it's important, of like the money scripts and the money scripts of the leader or the pastor making the ask. Like, I'm going to share this story because I always chuckle. Like several years ago, I was sharing with someone about like how I always felt guilty, like sitting in traditional church when the plate was passed in front of me and like I didn't put anything in. Like, I always felt guilty passing it on. And like the person I was talking to was saying how they felt annoyed when someone like skipped them over entirely with a plate, like assuming they didn't have any money to give. But those scripts, those understandings of money really get in the way of a leader or a pastor. So like, what's your best advice to, whether maybe it's a pastor thinking through, like, to use this word, because I've seen a few of these emails coming up, like it's the season in church, like a stewardship campaign.
Right. And I may not be the best guy to answer this, honestly. I think, churches have gone from passing the plate to putting it at the back of the auditorium.
Right.
But I've seen bad things happen in churches that put it at the back that never mention it, never talk about what the church is up to and where we're headed and how you can connect to that. Sometimes passing the plate is it's like you said, it's sort of a referendum on your giving. It's like, I don't need to feel guilty every week that I don't put $1 in the plate. But at the same time, if you haven't thought yet about what it is you're going to give and how you're going to give, you need to have that conversation with somebody. It isn't, so, that's like sort of in the moment, give money or you're a bad guy. And I just don't like that. I think that's the thing that chases people away. So if it were me, I would really go back to pastors and I would say, figure out what it is that you're trying to accomplish here. Figure out your main priorities attached to that. And then what is it going to cost for this church to accomplish that mission? And then talk to people in real terms that way. Instead of just giving to this nebulous black hole, it's like, no, your funding is helping us do this really great thing in this community to change lives this way or that way. And, sometimes people are like, well, I don't really care about that. Politely help them find another place where they can get on board with something that's happening. Otherwise, that person will kill giving in an unbelievable way. To say, well, I don't know why we're always giving money to this or that. And it's just like, man, with you around, well, this is never going to happen. I mean, it's sad, but I've seen it happen.
Yeah. So let's think about this, because this is certainly a challenge in many churches where older generations are, a huge part of the overall budget of giving, percentage wise. And certainly there's some hard facts, reality, like socioeconomically, matter of fact, like younger folks just don't have the levels of income necessarily to sustain and support. But what do you advise, like when you're thinking about whether it's working with nonprofits and churches, like to balance out, to diversify, whatever the terminology is, like the givers?
Yeah, I think with the younger set, they would rather give on their phone than they would in a paper way. So maybe come up with some kind of a fun campaign that lasts for a month that you can say, hey, if you're under 25, we want you to be involved in this, $20 this month, or whatever, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Something highly focused, short, and media electronic driven, I guess. That's where I'm seeing most young folks give. You're just trying to maybe build a habit and connect giving to a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they like that kind of thing. So, whatever your church can do to devise that method of giving, I would highly encourage it.
You talk about building a habit. I think there's that stereotype that young people, these younger generations, like aren't committed to institutions or organizations like the older generations. Do you think like it's as simple as like that? The habit hasn't been built for them?
Well, I think so, especially when it comes into a spiritual context.
Mm-hmm.
But, they give $10 a month to Spotify. They have that habit built in. So it's not like they don't get it.
Right.
No one has ever really challenged them and just said, hey, we need you guys. You're a big part of this. Here's how you can help. I think just getting engaged in their life to talk about it instead of being afraid of it. Like, oh no, if we talk about money, the 20-year-olds are all going to run away. And it's like, I don't think so. I think they want that deeper challenge and commitment, and they really want to build something with you. So give them a chance to do it.
Yeah, that's good. Thinking about, like, again, we've kind of been talking in and around like churches, nonprofits, back and forth. What do you think are some like practical things like a church could learn from like a nonprofit? Like one example that I've heard, like I've heard like in Southern Baptist spaces, more and more they're bringing on like a stewardship director in a church, which is surprising, but I guess not. Like, are you seeing that too? And then what do you think other trends that churches could pick up on?
Yeah, I'm seeing that a little bit. I like that idea because it puts somebody directly in charge of the gifts that come in and the people that are giving them.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been in so many churches where it's just hush-hush secretive.
Right.
And it's like, we can't ever build out a program if we don't know who's giving and who's not, and how to approach them and how to not approach them. So I think that's a great start. Hire somebody who will help focus on building I would call it a culture of giving or a culture of philanthropy. Let's get somebody talking about it more often than just once a year for the money talk.
Mm-hmm.
I think, churches need to do a better job of figuring out what it is that they're trying to do also.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's like, this is our thing. This is our hill. This is our cause. And they can articulate it clearly, and they can talk about, what they need to solve that problem and what it's going to cost. That's the most practical thing I think you can do. Then you can sort of figure out, okay, this is the kind of budget we need to build to make that goal happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of brings everyone together. I mean, if you can get everyone around a shared vision, it's amazing where that people find money.
Yeah, it is. This leads me to a broader thought, and I'm curious, like, Jason, as far as like I know, you've worked primarily like in non-denominational evangelical spaces, right? Like that's your
right. Like, correct.
So a lot of my background is in mainline, more established churches, like denominational churches, and I'm wondering, like, thinking about how denominational churches like often had like the institution, like the denominational legacy to kind of set their tone. Do you think that's something that non-denominational churches or evangelical churches have had sort of been forced into that's worked well for them as they've kind of had to individually like establish their own kind of what we're about?
Yeah, I definitely think it's an advantage if you're able to set your own tone and your own agenda. The mainline church might have a little bit more difficulty, but maybe I don't know how it works. Maybe you need to lead up a little bit more and say, we'd really like to initiate this sort of a ministry in our area, and here's how we're going to go about it. Perhaps that could be a good model for other churches in that mainline denomination. But I definitely think, the standalone or non-denominational, whatever you want to call it, has an advantage that way. We can pivot more quickly, which is sometimes really what you need in the funding world, is to be able to just pivot on a dime. It's like, okay, that isn't working, we need to recalibrate and keep moving forward with something that will work.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like most denominations will have some sort of like nationally driven like national offering, whether for the denominational causes. So there's some sort of like, and I guess it goes back to this, right? Like whatever your context is, and I imagine you'd agree with this, like you have to figure out some way of like tying that into your story, right?
Right.
So it makes sense to your attendees and givers, what have you.
Definitely. And you can do that. You can tie the broader story to your local story.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you have a story.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of it, right? Like,
yeah, it is.
You and I are both familiar with like StoryBrand, right?
Right.
I'll have to reference that past episode. But for listeners unfamiliar, like StoryBrand is basically this marketing concept, which marketing gets a scary word for many church folks. But like what I appreciate about like the StoryBrand approach is really like telling a story and telling people how they can be a part of that story, involved in that story. And I mean, I think this is, I suppose, again, I'm getting into broader kind of macro level stuff, is like in American Christianity, or at least since like 1950 to 2000 to some extent, like there's just been this assumption that you could just kind of roll out a church and people would show up and understand like what that church was about and what they were trying to do. And that doesn't work anymore.
That's right. Well, actually, they think they already know what that church does when they start one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of negativity around that. It's like, oh, they're the people that, fill in the negative blank. So we have to work twice as hard to get the story out in a way that's compelling, accurate, and will involve people in real life change. I still think, Loren, people want something deeper and more meaningful in their life.
Yes. And
that's what we're trying to create here. I'm not trying to trick people out of their money. This isn't some sort of a money-making scheme, like at the back channel infomercial stuff. This is, we're really like talking about, here's how we really want to change the world. Let's try and do it. And it's going to take resources to do that.
Let's ask just like a couple practical questions or some thoughts. Like I'm thinking about like the church I attend did a capital campaign, I think about a year ago, if I'm remembering, a little more over a year ago. And of course, like they had their quiet phase and then they came out with their public announcement and, great job. Like they had like 60% of it funded already, if not more, I can't remember. So they just did like a great job. One of the things I really liked about it was like in each phase, they had phases, is in each phase, like there was something external about like the funds that were being raised. So like obviously the majority of the funds were like building improvements and what have you. But for each part of the phase, there's some kind of like external project. Like they have a parking lot ministry, which is meant for people who are unhoused and need somewhere to go. Yeah. So like part of the phase was like, hey, we're going to remodel some part of our building to make our showers accessible for folks overnight.
Yeah.
How have you seen churches do a good job of like fundraising? So it's obviously internal, like they're trying to pay for the roof, but also to tell the story like, hey, this is having a broader impact than just like our roof.
Yeah. So one of the best places I saw that was, there's a large church there in Colorado, as a matter of fact. They were doing campaigns to help build places in parts of the world where there was a lot of hurt, a lot of famine. And they're like, hey, we're going to this. I don't know if I can name the place or not, but we're going to this place and we're going to build a hospital and we're going to build a school.
Wow.
And we're going to do that so well that they're going to ask us at the end of the day, why are you doing this? And then the broader context is, well, we're here because of the gospel. And so I think if you can, like your church funding strategy, I think is good. We're going to set up showers for that segment of people who are coming. Here's about how many of them will come. Here's about how many opportunities we'll have to share with them, if you talk about how it's making a difference in those people's lives, that often tends to be more successful.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anything churches should start doing immediately or stop doing immediately?
Yeah. Stop the money talk thing. Stop feeling guilty that you're talking about money. Enough of that. It's okay to talk about money, but stop also attaching that to shame and guilt.
Yeah.
Right. I think churches need to just get together and what is it that we want to do? And what are we asking people to sign on for? And if none of us are excited about that, it's time to make a change. So what are we excited about? What is that going to cost? And let's just approach people in humility and also with the level of excitement that this is really going to make a difference. Let's talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, let's take a break here and we'll come back with some closing questions. All right, we're back with Jason Hanselman. And Jason, the closing questions, you're welcome to take them as seriously or not as you'd like to.
Okay.
But if you're Pope for a day, what do you want to do? Or maybe some do you have any kind of direct papal bulls about fundraising? Take it as you want to.
Wow. That wouldn't be any fun. I don't want to connect that to fundraising.
Okay. Well, be Pope for a day.
Gone down that. Yeah, I almost said, and I think I've heard other guests talk about wearing the hat or riding in the mobile.
Yes.
Those are great. They're already been taken. I've always wanted to go to Italy. So I would make it art day. Let's make it art week. My family gets to go and just explore art around Italy for a week. That's really what I would want to do as Pope.
Well, the nice thing that you're Pope is you run the show. You get the whole museum to yourself.
I would like to touch some of the surfaces of the paint. As Pope, I think you can do that.
Probably.
If you go into a museum now, once you get a foot away from a painting, somebody is on top of you to get back. So I really want to feel that paint.
You could probably touch that canvas.
I would wear gloves. Obviously, but I want to get close to that art. That's really what I want to do.
Good. A theologian or historical Christian figure you'd want to meet or bring back to life?
You know what? We talk a lot about Dietrich Bonhoeffer around here. I would love to bring Dietrich back. Just his grit and his tenacity and his love for people who hated him. It just fascinates me. So I'd love to just have a sit down with Dietrich and just talk about life and have him tell me what I need to do with my life. I think it would be an interesting conversation. Interesting guy to talk with.
Absolutely. What do you think history will remember from our current time and place?
I think it depends on which way it goes, right? I think it could be the biggest opportunity ever blown in the history of mankind, because there's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of hurt and there's a lot of spaces that the church needs to fill. And so, I know a lot of people talk about, the world's blowing up, going crazy. It's the worst time we've ever seen. I don't know. There's a lot of, I view it as there's a lot of opportunity to make a lot of change. And I hope that's what we do.
Yeah. I'm reminded of, we had Mike Cosper on some time ago, and he said something it really depends. How things happen will depend on how we view Elon Musk, for instance. Yeah.
Well, will our generation see revival like other generations or not? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Where do you hope for the future of Christianity?
I'm hoping that this sounds weird and maybe not, but let's return to where we started. It just seems like we have so many entanglements and so many things that really aren't about the main thing.
Yeah.
Let's get back to early church days and focusing on community, focusing on life change, living in the power of the Holy Spirit. All of those things were pretty great.
I suppose this gets into a fundraising question to some extent. I'm thinking of a recent guest, Michelle Van Loon, who wrote about downsizing evangelicalism. And part of her thing was saying, like, we don't really need all these institutions.
Yeah.
Like, this is sort of a fundraising question too. Like, does there need to be some simplicity around organizations and structures?
Yes, I do. I think just if we could just simplify to, hey, let's think really big.
Mm-hmm.
Let's build really simple, and let's take some action. Mm-hmm. I stole those from another group, but I really think that's the core essence of it. Instead of, we have to have a major gifts program. We have to have an annual fund. We have to have a planned giving. We have to, so many arms. And it's just like, let's just trim the fat and just get a really great story about a really great organization, really changing lives, and just go out and talk to people about that and invite them, give them an opportunity to join that story.
Yeah. So what was that? Think big.
Simplify and act now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, share with folks how they can get a hold of you, connect with you, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, my official email is jasonfyv as in Victor @gmail.com. I just wrote a fundraising fable that I would love for people to get a hold of. I'm happy to give that away free digitally. Just reach out to me by email. And that's the best way to get a hold of me, Loren, is through that email. If people want to continue discussions about how they can raise money better, or even just say, hey, I have an issue that I'm tangled up in. Let's talk. I've had people in my life who've just come alongside me and done that, given me a half hour of their time to say, here's how you need to think about that differently, or here's how you need to act differently.
Yeah. And I've read the book, the booklet, I guess, if you will. Like, it's really simple, easy. Like, I read it, I think, on a plane ride, and like the second half of the plane ride, like, I printed out the book. The second half of the plane ride, I like scratched out some ideas based on the concepts in the book. So really recommend it. I think too, like what you've been saying all along here, simplicity is the way to go. Like, sharing story, sharing passion, connecting with their vision makes so much more sense than overloading them with money talk.
Right.
Oh,
right. Nobody likes that. Don't do that. I can tell the book changed your life, Loren. There's a glow about you. So.
Yeah. I'm just laughing. Like, I mean, we should wrap up here, but I'm just thinking like of my own experience. Like, I was leading a small church. Money was a challenge. Like, we were like $13K in the hole, which was like off a budget of less than $100K. So it was like a big chunk of money, relatively speaking, right? For the annual budget. And I got up there and said like, hey, things like there's some challenges here, but then I highlighted like things that were going right, progress that was being made.
Yeah.
And like people were like, oh yeah, I'm willing to give more. And then like 2 years later, I went away on sabbatical. They had a money crunch and they were like, the ship is sinking, give money.
Oh no.
And the second one didn't work as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it really does make a difference. So check out Jason's work. We'll make sure to have links to him in the show notes. Jason, we always leave folks with a word of peace. So may God's peace be with you.
Thanks again, Loren. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on the Future Christian Podcast. The Future Christian Podcast is produced by Resonate Media. We love to hear from our listeners with questions, comments, and ideas for future episodes. Visit our website at future-christian.com and find the Connect with Us form at the bottom of the page to get in touch with Martha or Loren. But before you go, do us a favor. Subscribe to the pod to leave a review. It really helps us get this out to more people. Thanks, and go in peace.